Joining us is Patricia Aceves, the Director of the Faculty Centre at Stony Brook. So Patricia, to what depth should learning objectives be written?
That's a good question, because I think I would agree with Professor Goodman in that it really varies by faculty in what I've seen. I've seen excellent learning objectives where there may be 4 or 5 objectives for the entire course. They're very broad. And I've seen others that are very, very specific and could almost be used as a study guide by the student. And in both cases, it can be very successful if they're well written.
Okay. And what about the role of students in defining those objectives? Have you had experience with faculty who do that?
I have, and I tend to see that more often with adult learners and more the non-traditional mature students who have a better sense of, they have some life experience, they have some knowledge, and they really have a direction that they might want to go. And in that case, the faculty member may have a text, they may have a general sense of where they want the course to go, but they'll let the students participate in the depth or the direction that they want to take the course. Generally not found in foundational introductory courses, but you might find it in a senior or graduate seminar.
And what impact does that have on the course usually?
Well, again, it's really up to the faculty member to guide that, to make sure that they're still meeting the overall objectives, the program level objectives, of course. But it can be really successful for the students because, for instance, if you're teaching a sociological concept on dating, for instance, they may be particularly interested in that, and you may say, we're going to spend a little bit more time or go in more depth in this particular objective, and I'll make that a bigger part of the course because that's of relevance. Or there may be a particular topic that's occurring across the country or across the world that you want to make that more of a focus, and that's of more interest to the students.
I find that to be true. If in my syllabus, for example, I list the dates for exams, and I give 3 exams. The last one is scheduled, it's a final exam scheduled by university, it's unchangeable. But the other 2, the dates are given and specifically say tentative. And I tell the students the reason it's tentative is because it depends on how we discuss material. If, as you say, we pick up a topic that they want to talk further about than I had anticipated, because the schedule is based upon my experience with the previous year's class. If this every class is different, so if this class wants to talk about this topic a little more, then that's going to extend the time. Or they move through it faster. That shortens the time. So I'd let the class guide that. With respect to adult learners, interestingly, I've had over the years, not often, but occasionally, really senior adult learners in my intimate relationships class, married and family. And they add a set of experiences that the students don't have but love to hear about. So you're not about, you talk about dating, they can really talk about dating from a variety of different perspectives. You talk about family life, they can talk about the perspectives. And unfortunately for some of them, they can talk about divorce in great detail.
Or talk about their kids dating.
And the kids, yes.
Okay. So learning objectives define what is going to be covered in the course, but it's also used to come up with assessments and so on. Can you address that a little bit?
Absolutely. That's one of the 3 components, important pieces of developing learning objectives, is it helps you to guide what you're going to use to measure whether they've learned that objective or not. If you're teaching a foundations course, you may be teaching at a knowledge or an understanding level, and there are some key concepts and terms that they may know. So if your learning objective states to know and understand the key concepts of sociology, as you're looking, how am I going to assess that, you're probably going to assess it at a cognitive level, some multiple choice, maybe an essay, some definitions, things like that. If you're teaching an advanced course, graduate level or a senior course, your objective may be much more application, synthesis, evaluation. You want them to be thinking critically about concepts, about perspectives, and about ideas. And you're going to assess that a little differently. There may be projects. How do you determine if a student is able to synthesize information? You may have a project, some group work. You may have a research paper. So how you state those objectives and really how you want them to think about their learning will help you determine how you're going to assess it.
And what's a good resource for writing objectives, for knowing the different levels at which to write them?
I think the one that we most often think about is Bloom's taxonomy, and he written a lot of books. There's been a lot of research done on Bloom. There's Beyond Bloom. There are a number of different models, but that's the one I tend to go back to most often. You can Google Bloom's taxonomy, and we'll provide you with lists and lists.
Is this
of
Bloom
terms.
or Hirsch?
In this case, it's Bloom.
Bloom.
That's the one that I tend to use.
Okay.
I had some objections to the Hirsch. I don't know the Bloom taxonomy. I read his book, The Closing of the American Mind, and I found them too restrictive. I found them too culturally determined for my taste, actually. And in fact, a number of my colleagues have written critical articles about that.
And it's interesting because I've heard those very same things. And one thing that the Faculty Center would like to be able to do is to bring in folks like you to talk with younger faculty who may be saying, all I know is Bloom's taxonomy, doesn't necessarily meet my needs. How can I look at this from a different perspective?
Okay. Norma and Patricia, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Pleasure, Graham.
Okay. If you have a question or questions for either of our guests, please feel free to post them on the blog on the TLT website at tlt.stonybrook.edu, where we'll also post the direct contact information for both of our guests. Look forward to seeing you on the next exciting episode of Innovations in Education.